Hello, fellow Bassaholics. Today we're going to be looking at a product from SVS. I'm Gene Delasala, I'm president of Audioholics, and today we're also here with
Hugo Rivera, vice president of marketing. Gene, couple subwoofers we have here or what?
Well, I guess you could use them as that, but they're really not meant for that. And I know everybody knows SVS for their legendary subwoofers, and we love their subwoofers, and we throw them through battery tests and they do well every time. But very few people know about their speaker products, Hugo. And we're hoping that this review today will change that and shed some light on people that they should be looking at more than just SVS subwoofers.
Well, definitely, I gotta say this. In the preliminary testing you ran of their speakers, I have to say they're very, very good.
Yeah.
The sound came out incredible.
And I wanted you to listen to them to get a second opinion. I'm glad you basically felt the same way I did. Mm-hmm. So let's give a little introduction on what we're looking at here today. These are called the SVS Ultra bookshelf speakers. They retail for $4.99 each, or $1,000 a pair about. They come in 3 different finishes. They come in black, ash, I think it's called. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They come in a white finish, and they also come in the black piano finish, which is the shiny finish that we have here.
My personal favorite.
Oh, it's stunning when you really see these in person. The nice thing about SVS is, even their basic black finish is a veneer. It's not a cheap vinyl.
Right.
And they don't upcharge you for any of the finishes you want, the 3 finishes that they offer. The build quality is impeccable on these products. Basically, it's a bookshelf speaker. You see a very common design. It's got a 6.5-inch woofer, a 1-inch tweeter. The woofer itself they call it a fiber cone or fiberglass cone. I took it out and I took a look at it, and it's basically a treated paper cone.
Right.
Call it what you will, but it is basically paper, which is sometimes it's a really good thing because paper is very efficient, and by putting the coating on the outside of the driver that they call the glass fiber, it gives it a very good stiffness. Mm-hmm. And you look at the motor structure on just the woofer alone, and you could tell that this is a company that's serious about drivers. They don't use a cheap stamped basket. They have a huge magnet on it. It's not like this little wimpy magnet you get on some of their competitors. And the interesting thing is, you look closer at the basket. It's the cast basket. It's got an aluminum shorting ring, mm-hmm. and what that does is that reduces the gap inductance, so it increases the high frequency performance of the driver. It also has, it doesn't have a vented pole piece like you see on subwoofer drivers, but what it does is really cool is it's got these little holes, like little punch outs almost by the cone. It's really close to the former itself, so what that does is that it reduces the turbulence mm-hmm. of the cone, of the voice coil.
Yes. And
it also acts as a little bit as a vent as well, so it's like a pressure release.
Exactly.
So the woofer was very well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very high quality component. And then we look at the tweeter. The tweeter has an aluminum dome. It's a hard dome. Mm-hmm. Normally I'm not a huge fan of metal dome drivers, but if they're done right, like this one is, I prefer the aluminum typically over like the titanium drivers. It's just a smooth sound, a really smooth sound. You don't even know you're listening to a metal cone tweeter.
Definitely, one thing I gotta say as well is the encasing here, nothing hollow, it's like really no vibration that you can hear.
Yeah, and it's well braced. I think it's a 3/4 inch thick MDF, and then the front baffle itself is a full 1 inch thick, mm-hmm. which is the most important area. You want the front baffle to be thicker. It has rigidity. That's where the drivers are mounted. And then when we poked inside of the speaker, we didn't see a hollow box like you see from some of your competitors.
No.
I mean, these speakers are well stuffed. They're well insulated. The crossovers are very high component quality. Even down to the speaker wires themselves, they have foam around the wires to reduce any type of turbulence or noise that the wires would cause. There's just a lot of attention to detail.
Yeah, and it's very well thought out, and like you said, that attention to detail is what makes the huge difference when you're listening to speakers of this price range, Yes. Some other speakers, you don't get the kind of quality of the sound, the crisp, the nice voice that you feel that it's in the room, you know?
It's almost like that better than being there experience that we often talk about.
Absolutely, yes.
And just to get back more to the design execution, the reason why you're hearing such a natural sound out of these speakers, you look at the little parts on the inside that the average consumer doesn't get to see, like the crossover, for example. They're not using cheap parts.
No.
On the tweeter, there's air core inductors, there's polypropylene caps. On the woofers, there's a nice steel core laminate inductor, very oversized so it doesn't saturate. The resistor itself is on a standoff. It's not glued into the PCB board, so it helps with heat dissipation. You know, second order high pass, second order low pass. Some speakers, they don't even put a crossover on the mid-range.
Right.
And then you get breakup in the cone, and you know, you can't always see that in a frequency response graph, but you could hear it.
Right.
And these guys just did an incredible job executing the crossover. And then I talked to, you know, Ed Mullen over at SVS to ask him what were the design criteria, how they came about with the design, and very interesting stuff that he gave me. Basically, you know, they've done a lot of the work at the NRC. They use anechoic chambers to measure the speakers. They use the NRC sound rooms to do the final voicing of the speaker. And the thing I really love about SVS is they don't use science to cheapen a product like some people do. I mean, they, you know, they justify good engineering parts, will give you good measured performance.
Right.
They don't make excuses. They let people freely measure their products. They conform, you know, with their subwoofers, for example. We do all CEA tests. We do the test. They do their own tests. We always get within a dB of their results. It's like they have really nothing to hide.
No, they're very easy to work with. They're very open with all this, especially when we're conducting their testing and you send them all these questions, you know.
Yeah, and you know, it's not all roses. I'll give you a couple of things that I found that don't quite conform to the spec. Not a big deal, but like, for example, they claim the speakers are 8 ohms. I measured them, they're really 4 ohms. Below, you know, even at the IEC limit of in an 8 ohm speaker, it has to be 6.4 ohms. These things dip down well below that in the 50 hertz range and the 200 hertz range. But they are very high sensitivity. And in fact, these guys are one of the few speaker companies I could literally count on one hand that give you a sensitivity rating, not at full bandwidth like most do, because that inflates the number. They give you a sensitivity rating from 300 hertz to 3 kilohertz, which is a standard on how you should be doing it. It's how we do it when we measure speakers. I measured 87 dB at 2.83 volts. It's exactly how they spec'd it on the product. They rate these speakers down to 45 hertz. I looked at the measurements and I looked at the saddle point and the impedance graph, and it's really, it looks to me more like a 50 hertz tuning, but we're splitting hairs here.
Right.
The bottom line with these speakers is they're not a subwoofer. They're not going to give you earth-shattering bass, but they're going to blend extremely well with a subwoofer. Or if you're in a small room, you may not need a sub.
No, for sure.
But the bottom line is the driver mechanics. We had these things cranking in a 6,000 cubic foot room. We couldn't get the woofers to bottom out.
No way.
It never sound compressed. And you remember some of the listening we did. We listened to Patricia Barber on SACD.
Yeah.
And my opinion was I felt like Patricia's voice was very neutral, very natural sounding.
Absolutely.
Good separation of instruments. And then we also listened to Sade. We have a very limited pressing of Sade on vinyl. Greatest hits. That was a treat. Awesome. Tell me, you know, why don't you tell us what you thought about how that album sounded?
I think it sounded very, very well, especially when we ran a little bit of an unfair comparison with your reference speakers, you know.
Right.
It still holds its own.
Yeah,
you know?
very tonal. The tonal similarities from, I would say, maybe 100 hertz on up, it's very neutral.
Absolutely.
And that's what you want with a speaker. You don't want a speaker that overemphasizes. A lot of speakers, quite frankly, they cause listening fatigue if they're too bright.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you don't get that kind of fatigue with these, you know.
Right.
Everything is very neutral, like you said. One thing that we need to definitely cover as well that caught my attention was the grills, you know. They're in nice trapezius form, which I think it helps with the refraction as well.
Yeah, it does. It definitely cuts down on the diffraction off axis, and you can see right here, and we'll do a little camera zoom on it as well. And you know what, the interesting thing about the grill is it's not made out of cheap, thin plastic. No. You get some speaker companies use you can take the grill and just gotta...
They get the parts at the dollar store, you know?
Yeah, not the case. These are stiff. I mean, this is like made out of the same material the cabinet's made out of.
Absolutely.
And even more important, the mesh on the grill is really tightly conformed. So you put the grill on, you're not going to get all sorts of losses. You know, I like to listen to speakers without grills, but people have kids.
Yeah.
And you don't want kids sticking fingers in drivers.
For sure. Yeah. I'm very happy with these speakers, to be quite honest with you. I think especially for the price,
yes,
they're top notch.
A couple of features they give you that some competitors won't give you now is they're biampable. You know, not just bi-wireable or single wireable. The crossover is physically separated for the high pass and the low pass, so you can biamp these if you want. They're rear ported, which gives you a little bit extra bass extension. If you're putting them close to a wall, you could plug the ports. And again, the finish, you know, the edges are radius, they're not just a square box.
Yep.
So there's a lot of good stuff going on here. I think SVS really hit it out of the park with these speakers. And you know, if you haven't considered SVS for anything other than subwoofers, you might want to reconsider that thought.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add, Gene? I think that about sums it up.
I think we summed it up, other than the fact that they look as good as they sound, and they sound real, and you should definitely give them a chance. They have a 45-day return policy, which is one of the most generous return policies in the industry.
That's right.
Pay shipping both ways if you don't like the product. I mean, very few companies do that.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think that shows the kind of good faith that they have.
Yeah.
You know, they're not here to take your money. They're here to give you a really, really good product, you know, and give you the best value. So
I agree, definitely. And you know, if anything else I'd like to say, they do have an on-wall product if you want a surround speaker. They have a center channel that matches. They have a tower, the Ultra Tower. I think we have a video review on the towers done by Marshall, and he was really impressed by him.
Right.
So, you know, it looks like a good family product. So if you're looking for an all-inclusive speaker package from subwoofer to a 5.1 or 7.1 system, then, you know, you can match everything aesthetically and tonality with SVS products here today.
Absolutely. Awesome, Gene. Well, thank you so much for dropping the knowledge on these nice set of speakers.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
And you know, for all of you hearing this, I invite you to go ahead and visit audioholics.com, where we have tons of more reviews and solid articles that just pretty much bust about every single myth in the audio industry, you know?
We're all about myth busting. That's why we're really happy to work with companies that don't propel myths.
Well, at the end, you know, we're all about the truth about audio.
That's right.
Anyways, we're kind of like the Howard Stern of the audio industry.
Oh no. A little cleaner though, I hope.
But, you know, I also invite you to sign up to our weekly newsletter. We send it at least once a week, sometimes once every 5 days, maybe even a little bit more at times. But filled with tons of information, latest articles over there. And also for signing up to our newsletter, you get our free top AV gear guide. Basically, every single year we put up a new AV gear guide, and Gene is gonna cover that up right here.
Sure, thanks, Hugo. So basically, if you sign up for our newsletter, we send you a printable PDF of the gear guide, and what it has is it has our best picks for the year, and based on value, performance, or both. Yeah. So if you're looking for a Blu-ray player, you're looking for a pair of speakers, a subwoofer, it's just a great format to have one document. You know, with good recommendations, very solid recommendations.
Absolutely. So. You know, printable, you can take it with you to the store.
Right.
Awesome document. At any rate, thank you so much for listening to us. If you like this video, go ahead and click like below. Comment, let us know what you think, what other videos you would like to see. And feel free to share them with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, anywhere else you want. All right? At any rate, up until next time, keep listening.